All right, everyone, get ready because this deep dive is going to be a wild ride. We're going to be exploring spooky celebrations from all over the world.
Ooh, sounds intriguing, especially with Halloween right around the corner, right?
Exactly. It's got me thinking about why we're so drawn to these eerie traditions year after year, and how do other cultures view this whole idea of life, death, and the spirit world?
Yeah, it's a question that has fascinated people for centuries. And what better time to dive into it than now, when the veil between worlds feels just a little bit thinner?
I love that.
Hmm.
So to guide our exploration, we have a video packed with insights on these global traditions. We're going to start by digging into the roots of Halloween. Then we'll jet set across continents to uncover festivals that echo those themes. Like Mexico's Dia de los Muertos or Japan's Obon Festival.
What I find really captivating is how these celebrations, while so diverse in their expressions, all grapple with the same fundamental questions, like our relationship with mortality and the human need to connect with those who have passed on.
Okay, so let's kick things off with Halloween's origins. I think most people associate it with candy and costumes, but there's a much deeper history there. Our video takes us way back to the ancient Celts and their festival of Samhain.
Right, Samhain wasn't just a harvest festival. It was a time when the Celts believed that the boundary between the living and the dead was at its most permeable.
Wow. So for them, this wasn't just a spooky story. It was like a lived reality.
Exactly.
So picture this bonfires blazing to ward off malevolent spirits, people disguised in costumes, maybe to blend in with otherworldly visitors or even scare them away.
It's like a proto-Halloween party with a deeply spiritual core.
I love that. Okay, so as Christianity spread throughout Europe, Samhain went through a transformation. The church tried to assimilate those pagan traditions.
Mhm.
So Samhain became All Hallows Eve, the eve of All Saints' Day.
Yeah, so you have this blending of old and new, a shift from appeasing spirits to honoring saints.
But those old customs like bonfires and costumes, they kind of stuck around. And eventually they evolved into the Halloween we know today.
It's pretty amazing how these ancient practices have woven their way through centuries, adapting and evolving to resonate with each new generation.
It really shows the power of tradition.
Yeah.
Okay, but now let's trade those Celtic mists for the vibrant colors of Mexico. Our video takes us right into the heart of Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead. It's celebrated on November 1st and 2nd.
And here we encounter a totally different perspective on death, wouldn't you say? Dia de los Muertos blends indigenous beliefs with Catholicism. It's a tradition that embraces death not with fear, but with joyous remembrance.
The imagery in the video is stunning. Families create these elaborate altars decorated with bright orange cempasúchil flowers. They're marigolds, and they're believed to guide the spirits home. And then there are the offerings, favored foods and drinks, photos of loved ones, intricately decorated sugar skulls.
It's not about mourning, it's a vibrant homecoming for the spirits.
It's like a reunion, a family gathering that goes beyond the physical world.
Exactly. The belief is that the spirits return to visit, to feast, and share in the warmth and love of their living family.
It's about honoring their memory and cherishing the continuity of life, even in death.
Yeah.
It's a powerful concept, this idea that death isn't an ending, but a transition, a different state of being that still allows for connection and love.
Absolutely. And this concept isn't limited to Mexico. Let's shift gears and go to Japan, where we find Obon, a festival that shares a similar focus on welcoming ancestral spirits.
Obon is usually held in August, and the visuals in the video are mesmerizing. Families light delicate paper lanterns, each representing a departed soul, and then they release them onto rivers or out to sea, believing they will guide the spirits back to the other world.
It's a beautiful display of reverence and remembrance, a collective act of love and respect for those who've passed on. And during Obon, families also clean and decorate ancestral graves and prepare special food offerings, very similar to what we saw with Dia de los Muertos.
So it seems that this desire to connect with loved ones who have passed, to honor their memory and seek their blessings, is a universal human impulse. It makes you wonder, why do we feel this need to maintain a connection with the afterlife?
That's a deep question. It speaks to the core of the human experience. We're storytellers. We seek meaning and connection. And what greater mystery is there than the mystery of death?
So true. But for now, let's hold on to that question as we go back to the heart of Halloween's origins. The video takes us to Ireland and Scotland, where the echoes of Samhain are still alive.
Halloween in these places has a more primal, almost chilling feel. It's often called Night of Fear, which really points back to that Celtic belief in the thinning veil between worlds.
Right. The video shows these massive bonfires burning against the night sky, casting flickering shadows that dance with the spirits. People wear costumes often grotesque or supernatural, trying to ward off mischievous entities.
And we can't forget the jack-o'-lantern. The video tells the story of Stingy Jack, a trickster who outsmarted the devil but was condemned to wander the earth with a burning coal inside a hollowed-out turnip to light his way.
Which eventually became the carved pumpkins we see today. It's amazing how a spooky campfire story can transform into such a recognizable symbol. But our global tour isn't done yet. We have one more stop, and it's a real mind-bender.
We're heading to Thailand to explore a festival that, like Halloween, embraces the return of spirits. But unlike the eerie atmosphere of Halloween, Thailand's Phay Thakon is a celebration full of vibrant energy and joy.
Joyful spirits. Okay, you have my attention. Tell me more about this Phay Thakon.
Picture people dancing in the streets wearing these incredibly elaborate and sometimes grotesque masks. They represent spirits returning to the world of the living.
So instead of warding off spirits, they're welcoming them back with a party.
Exactly. It's a celebration of life and death, acknowledging the cyclical nature of existence. It really highlights how diverse cultural perspectives can be, even when dealing with universal themes.
This deep dive is already blowing my mind. It's incredible how these traditions, separated by continents and centuries, offer unique ways of engaging with the mysteries of the afterlife. But I have a feeling our journey isn't over yet.
You know me too well. We've only scratched the surface. Get ready, because our next stop takes us to a place where Halloween has become a truly unexpected cultural phenomenon.
Okay, you've piqued my curiosity. Lead the way.
Okay, so get this. Our next stop on this global Halloween tour is Japan.
Japan. Wait, didn't we already talk about Obon?
Yeah, but this time we're focusing on Halloween itself. You know, the holiday with Celtic roots and that strong American identity. Well, in the last few decades, it's really taken off in Japan.
Hold on, you're saying trick-or-treating and jack-o'-lanterns have made their way into a culture that's already rich with traditions for honoring ancestors and spirits? That's kind of crazy.
It really is. And it's not just a small thing either. Halloween in Japan, especially in cities like Tokyo and Osaka, has become a huge cultural event.
So what does Japanese Halloween actually look like? Is it a direct copy of American traditions, or has it morphed into something uniquely Japanese?
It's a cool mix. You'll see the familiar stuff like carved pumpkins, spooky decorations, and people in costumes. But there's a distinct Japanese spin on it all.
Okay, how so?
Well, cosplay is already a big part of Japanese pop culture, and that's become a major influence on Halloween costumes.
I see. So instead of just ghosts and goblins, you might see people dressed up as anime characters, video game heroes, or historical figures.
Exactly. It's like this visual explosion of different worlds and aesthetics.
That sounds amazing. And while trick-or-treating isn't as common, Halloween has become a time for big gatherings, parties, and parades where people can show off their incredible costumes.
Right. It's become a huge spectacle.
I bet the level of detail and creativity in those costumes is incredible. But it makes you wonder, why is Halloween so popular in Japan?
It's a question that has puzzled people for years. Some think Halloween, with its focus on fun fantasy and letting loose, provides a nice contrast to Japan's more reserved social norms.
So it's like a form of escapism, a chance to step outside societal expectations and try on different identities.
Right. And then there's the visual element. Halloween, with its costumes and decorations, is inherently visual. And Japan, with its rich artistic heritage, has a knack for those kinds of eye-catching displays.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But this brings up an interesting point. We've been talking about how different cultures engage with the spirit world. Does Halloween in Japan, with its more lighthearted and commercial side, really fit into that framework?
It's a good question. Some argue that it's just superficial, a fad driven by consumerism and Western pop culture.
But there must be more to it than that.
Yeah.
Especially considering Japan's traditions like Obon, there's got to be a deeper connection.
I think you're right. If we look closer, we see how Halloween might actually resonate with some Japanese beliefs. Japanese folklore is full of tales of yokai, these supernatural creatures that can be mischievous, spooky, even dangerous.
So they're kind of like the spirits and creatures associated with Halloween.
Yeah.
Huh.
And even the idea of costumes warding off evil spirits, which we trace back to the Celtic Samhain, has parallels in Japanese customs. During certain festivals, people wear masks and costumes representing deities or spirits, hoping for their protection and good fortune.
So even though Halloween in Japan might seem like a new thing, it seems to tap into a deeper understanding of the supernatural and the power of ritual and symbolism.
Exactly. It's like a cultural mashup where different traditions combine and create something new and interesting.
I love that. But before we get too lost in the analysis,
Yeah.
I think we have one more stop on our Halloween adventure.
Absolutely. This one takes us to a place where the celebration of death is truly unique and might even seem a little startling. Get ready for Madagascar.
Madagascar! Wow, that's unexpected. Okay, I'm definitely intrigued. What are we in for?
Well, Madagascar has a tradition called Famadihana, which means the turning of the bones. It happens every few years, usually during the dry season, and it involves.
Wait, turning of the bones. That sounds intense.
It is. It might seem jarring compared to how other cultures approach death and burial, but in Madagascar, it's a deep-rooted tradition that reflects their worldview and their connection to their ancestors.
So what exactly does turning of the bones entail?
Every few years, families exhume the bodies of their loved ones from their tombs. They rewrap them in fresh burial cloths. And then this is where it gets interesting. They dance with the bodies.
They dance with the bodies. Like, actually dance. I'm having trouble picturing this.
Yeah, actually dance. It's not meant to be disrespectful.
Mm.
It's seen as a joyful reunion, a way to honor the ancestors and keep their spirits connected to the family.
So it's about maintaining that bond even after death.
Right. They believe the spirits of the dead can influence the living. So this ritual is a way to keep that connection strong and seek their blessings.
Wow, that's powerful. It really challenges our Western ideas about grieving and remembering the dead.
Definitely. Famadihana shows us that our ideas about death, mourning, and the afterlife are shaped by our culture. What seems strange or taboo in one culture can be deeply meaningful in another.
It really highlights the diversity of human experience and how we grapple with these big questions of life, death, and what comes after.
It does, and there's so much we can learn from other cultures, even those that seem very different from our own.
This global tour has been eye-opening, but I have a feeling we're not quite done yet. Is there one final stop on this journey?
You read my mind. Our exploration isn't over. For our final stop, we're going to a realm where the line between life and death is especially blurry. Get ready to venture into the world of necromancy.
Necromancy. Okay, now we're getting into spooky territory.
Yeah.
This takes our exploration of the afterlife to a whole new level.
Okay, so necromancy. Are you ready to dive in? It's a topic that often conjures up images of, dark rituals and trying to talk to the dead, but there's actually a much deeper history to it.
I have to admit, when I hear necromancy, I do picture those stereotypical things, like seances and Ouija boards.
Yeah.
Maybe even someone trying to raise the dead. But you're saying there's more to it than that.
Oh yeah, way more. At its core, necromancy is about practices that try to communicate with the deceased, often to gain knowledge, guidance, or even power. It's a concept that's been present in so many cultures throughout history, and it's often tied to religious beliefs, folklore, and magic.
So it's not just about spooky parlor tricks. There's a real historical and cultural significance.
Absolutely. In ancient civilizations like Greece and Rome, necromancy was sometimes seen as a legitimate way to seek guidance from the dead, especially from those believed to have special knowledge or wisdom, like the Oracle of Delphi. Her prophecies were thought to be inspired by the spirit of the god Apollo.
So it wasn't always viewed as this dark or forbidden practice.
Not necessarily. The way necromancy was perceived really depended on the culture and their religious beliefs. In some cultures, it was definitely taboo, associated with dark magic and evil spirits. But in others, it was totally accepted, part of religious rituals, or used for things like divination, healing, or even communicating with ancestors.
This is so fascinating. It's amazing how something we might see as spooky or taboo today could have been completely normal, even sacred in other times and places.
It really shows how our ideas about death, the afterlife, and the line between the living and the dead are all shaped by our culture. What seems strange or scary to us can be deeply meaningful to others.
This whole deep dive has been mind-blowing. We've gone from ancient Celtic festivals to modern Japanese Halloween, from dancing with the dead in Madagascar to exploring necromancy. It's incredible how many ways humans have found to approach death, the afterlife, and our connection to the spirit world.
It all comes back to those big questions, doesn't it? What happens after we die? Is there something more? And if so, how do we connect with it? These questions have driven spiritual and philosophical thought for centuries. They've inspired so many different traditions and beliefs.
As we wrap up, I can't help but think about our listeners out there. Maybe some of them are even getting ready for their own Halloween celebrations. After exploring all these different traditions, what do you think their view of Halloween might have changed?
That's a great question. I hope that when they're carving their pumpkins, putting on their costumes, and telling spooky stories, they'll remember that they're part of a tradition that connects them to a vast and diverse human history. A history full of mystery, wonder, and this deep desire to understand the mysteries of life and death.
That's a beautiful thought. This deep dive has really been a journey. It's shown us the power of tradition, the diversity of human experience, and our never-ending fascination with the world beyond our own. So to all our listeners out there, keep exploring, keep questioning, and maybe keep a candle lit for those who've crossed over to the other side. Thanks for joining us.